Resilience, trauma, healing. Three forces that shape our lives, yet too often we battle them in silence. But what if we could rewrite the narrative? What if mental health wasn't stigmatized but understood, where struggles became stepping stones and recovery became empowerment? This is a conversation that challenges the norms, dismantles misconceptions, and sparks transformation to inspire, to heal, to change the game. Today, we have with us George Brooks, George P. Brooks, who is going to talk to us about this topic and the work that he's doing within his community to dismantle the stigmas against mental health. Welcome to Impactors Out Loud. I'm your host, Tracy B. Allen. Impactors Out Loud is where social impact meets strategy, spotlighting trailblazing entrepreneurs, their challenges, and the revolutionary innovations driving real change. Each week, we dive into powerful stories, strategies, and insight to inspire and equip those passionate about making an impact through business. George, welcome to Impactors Out Loud. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your cause tale? How did you get into this field? Tell us about yourself.
Right. Well, at about age 7, I began displaying symptoms of bipolar disorder. And I dealt with a lot of childhood trauma coming up, trauma in adulthood. And it was all exacerbated by what I was dealing with health-wise, in terms of family and everything else. I went through about a 10-year period of addiction. I went through health issues. I went through traumatic marriage. I went through custody battles. I went through so much. But about 7 years ago, I relocated from my hometown of Memphis to the DFW post-divorce. And I really embarked upon a journey of recovery. Not only recovery from the addiction and the physical issues, but recovery of my spirit. Things that I long neglected, things that I never really saw much value in terms of looking at myself. So I began therapy 7 years ago. I do that once a week. I began to take care of my health, my body, my spirit, and it made me resilient. And even though throughout the past 7 years, I've dealt with things, I've dealt with periods of betrayal, of abandonment, of homelessness, I've remained resilient. And 7 years ago, started my nonprofit called Metta Association. And we operate under 3 tenets. One is to destigmatize and decriminalize having a mental illness. We feel that without addressing that first, as long as that stigma is so prevalent, we won't be able to have real discussions that will improve the state of the mentally ill, Black men, white men, all people. We also believe in fighting recidivism. We believe that those that are just affected need to be given an equal playing ground upon release so that they can be successful and be productive members of society. And one of the main things in dealing with that is dealing with their mental health and emotional health. And the third main thing that's really passionate to me is promoting healthy fatherhood. In our communities and in all communities, there tends to be, especially now, there's a chasm between men and women, and it's affecting our children. So what I do and what I endeavor to do and what's important to me is try to foster an environment, methods, coping mechanisms to where men can be better fathers, whether you're with a mother or not. It's about healthy fatherhood and those type of things. So that's what I do. I'm also a public speaker. I'm working on my first book. I have various projects going, various business interests that I'm trying to foster right now. And it all came from me not giving up on myself. It comes from wanting to fight for those that cannot speak for themselves. So that's how I developed my resilience. That's what I'm doing. And that's kind of how I got here today.
Okay. So you said you have a nonprofit that helps men helps to decriminalize mental health. And I wanted to talk about that aspect because that stood out to me. When you say decriminalizing mental health, what exactly do you mean? Do you mean that because someone has, and I'm asking the questions that I know everybody would have. Are you saying, and this goes for men and women, are you saying that because someone has a mental health illness that they should not be held responsible for the actions that they take in an episode?
Oh, definitely, they should be held accountable. But there's so many different factors that go into an incident like that.
Okay.
My pro nonprofit Metta Association a couple of years ago assisted in drafting a resolution with the Memphis Police Department to reinstitute the CIT training, which is the Crisis Intervention Team. And
Okay.
my motivation behind that was to try to do something to where when someone with a mental illness is encountered by the police, that the police are adequately trained to assess the situation and deal with it without it going left. And by doing so, that's one of the ways I mean by decriminalizing mental illness, because oftentimes when those with mental illnesses are in those situations, it's automatically assumed that they're a threat. It's automatically assumed
Mhm.
that their danger is not de-escalated. So by actually doing things in the community, like being part of this resolution back in Memphis, that's how my nonprofit and I are working to decriminalize it.
Okay. I like that. Because I see that often where the police department is not trained to identify people with mental health issues,
Right,
and it goes from 0 to 100 in under 2.2 seconds. And that
right,
becomes a dangerous situation, not only for the person who's having a crisis, but for the police officers themselves. So
right,
I like that work. And I think that's something that should be actually taught throughout the country. Um, in police departments or first responders, period, because sometimes it
right,
even happens with EMS, right? Even though they're medical health professionals, sometimes they're unable to determine whether that person is having a drug induced psychosis or they're having some type of mental health crisis, and it escalates where they're calling the police, and it just becomes chaotic for everybody involved and dangerous for all people involved. I've seen where a lot of people have lost their lives in encounters with police officers because of this. They have not, because they weren't, because people are scared, because police officers are people,
right,
right? And they're
right,
scared. I mean, I just want us to have a real conversation about the whole thing. And so sometimes they're scared. I'm not dismissing their actions, but I'm just saying
right.
if we had better education about the issues and what to identify and how to identify and how to deal with it and de-escalate it, we probably have less incidents of people being unalived because of it. Yeah. So the other thing that you talked about was
Right. And the thing about these now that handles that
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry,
I
we got a
think we
little
have a
lag.
little delay. Yeah, I think we have a little delay. Go ahead.
Well, that addresses yes, that addresses the criminalization. One thing, and the most important thing, and really the putting the cart before the horse, is dealing with destigmatizing it in terms of how we as each individual think about mental illness, how we need to understand, even if we're not directly affected by having one, we are affected by those around us, because that's the one thing that does not discriminate. Mental illness does not care how much money you make. It does not care your socioeconomic background. It does not care about
Mhm.
anything like that. If you're affected by it, you're affected by it. Now, there may be some mitigating factors in terms of how it's addressed and how it's taken care of, but it's something that affects everyone. So we all have that relative that we know, whether they're at the end of Big Mama's hallway in the room and we never see them, but we all have those friends, we all have those people in our families that are dealing with mental illness, and
Yeah.
we have to really try to understand it. That may be hard for people to do, but what we need is empathy and accountability in terms of
Mhm.
dealing with mental illness, because it's been something that's been long ignored, especially in terms of the Black community. And I just want to go ahead and shine the spotlight on it so we can look at it, address it, and have some dialogue that's really going to improve people, improve our standing in our communities, and improve the world as a whole.
Yeah, I agree. You also talked about helping fathers become better fathers. So can you give me some information about that?
Um, I went through some things with my father that were traumatic coming up, and but the second half of my life with him and my time with him was very, very rewarding. And
Mhm.
once I had my oldest son, Josh, we really bonded over that. And what I realized was that, whatever foibles my father may have made,
Mhm.
they were due to him having his own issues. And it helped me let go of a lot of anger that many people would still have toward him, because I had to understand, he was dealing with his own issues. He was dealing with stages of his life, and I've always considered myself a great father. I've always been actively involved, and I think had I not gone through that trauma with him, I don't think I'd be the father that I am today. So I say
Mhm.
that to say this: we need to start having discussions about fatherhood, as far as the pressures of being a man, the pressures of dealing with fatherhood, especially in relationships where you are not with a mother or if it's a contentious relationship. So if we can start to build that foundation with my brothers, as far as being men and being fathers, it's going to translate to healthier relationships. Hopefully not, not only with a mother, not only with the child, but with a mother as well. But we got to start
Right.
somewhere. And these are
Mhm.
conversations we have avoided because they're not easy, they're not fun, but yet still
Mhm.
we still need to have them. So that's one thing I'm a staunch advocate for is fatherhood, family, trying to bring back some accountability to our community, some values that are going to build our community up, because not dealing with this is not only affecting the makeup, the shape, the taste, the flavor of our communities, it's affecting
Mhm.
our pocket. It's keeping us from thriving economically. It's I would love to see a Black Wall Street in every major city, but until we deal with the issues affecting our communities, the poverty, the crime, the ignorance, and all those things, by addressing our mental, spiritual, and emotional health, we'll never get to that point, and our communities will continue to languish and be subject to things like gentrification, objectification,
Yeah.
and other things like that.
Okay. You said two things that I wanted to piggyback on. So I have two questions. You
Yep.
mentioned spiritually, and like you said, every family has people with mental health, especially schizophrenia or bipolar. They are two prevalent mental health issues that I see that affect men. Of course, they affect women, but I'm talking about, like, especially my own family. I've seen some men with those two specific mental health issues. Um, and I've also seen the women, the mothers of these men, want to pray it away in church. Do you see that often? Instead of getting them the actual help that they need, letting them go on medication, they think it's like some type of demonic thing, or they just need to get closer to the Lord and they want to pray it away.
Yeah, that's foolishness, because that's what I refer to it as. I can see if we lived in a more archaic time, but I don't.
Uh-huh.
And this is something I take this kind of personally, because when I was coming up, that's what people always said to
Mhm.
me. They didn't talk about
Mhm.
medication. They didn't talk, just pray
Right.
it away.
Pray
And
it away.
for me
Mhm.
personally, prayer is an important part of my day. It's part of my
Of
spiritual guide.
course.
It's part,
Mhm.
but that's not the case for everyone. So by saying that, all you gotta do is pray it away. You're ignoring the other aspects of recovery that are so important. So one of the things I'm going to talk about in my book that I've developed through my experience and through my journey is the 5 tenets of recovery. And
Mhm.
spirituality is very important, but we need to have systems in place for those that are not spiritually affected,
Exactly.
those that are of a different faith, for those that have no faith. That doesn't. I don't want people to feel like, if I'm not praying, if I'm not in church, if I'm not believing this dogma, that somehow I'm removed from getting help. And we have to find ways that can help everyone, regardless of economic factors, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of orientation politically,
Mhm.
and regardless of their spiritual orientation as well.
Mhm.
But if you
Are you
think you're going to
finding
pray it away, no, that's foolhardy and foolishness.
okay. Are you finding that men are receptive in your nonprofit? The men that come to you are receptive in getting help, or because I always think the first thing in any, because I had this conversation with someone the other day, and I said for someone to seek counseling, whether it be professional or otherwise, and for it to work, that person has to come to a level of self awareness. And the level of self awareness that they have to come to me first, is to acknowledge that there's something wrong. First, you may not know what it is, but something is wrong. And then the second thing is, I need help and I want to change. Right?
Right,
Are you
right.
finding that these are traits that the men that are coming to you for mental health services have, or is that something that you guys have to work on to get them to, like, hey, these are the actions that you're partaking in, these are the things that are happening to you, and this is possibly what it is? Like, do you have to help them to come to awareness, or are they already coming to you self-aware, or through the court system, like court mandated therapy or anything like that? I know I asked 3 different questions at one time, but yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Typically, by the time by the time Well, the main issue before we even get to men,
Hmm.
one big thing I have to deal with is helping Black folks in general.
Okay.
Um, it's very hard to get my people to
Hmm.
not only have a sense of self awareness, but to understand that they need to deal with this. But women are far more receptive than the men are. Now the men, they'll
Hmm.
come along, or if I post certain things, y'all get a certain reaction. But it's really hard to get them to have those discussions about themselves.
Okay.
Now, I encounter many of my brothers. We can sit and talk about so and so. We can sit and talk about what needs to be done in the community. But in terms of
Hmm.
turning that into an intrinsic thing, they really discuss what's going on with them. That's taking a lot of work, and that'll take time. But I
Hmm.
think that's where women tie in so beautifully to what I want to do, because women are often going to be that conduit between that man and getting that help. And that's why I
Hmm.
believe in nurturing healthier relationships between men and women, because we need each other to heal. Now, while I focus on the men, I would never negate a woman's influence, because how many of
Okay.
these women, how many of these men have sisters, wives, mothers, significant others that
Hmm.
have their influence and can help guide them in the right direction? But if they're not ready on an individual level to have that sense of self-awareness, to
Hmm.
stop being a punk, stop being afraid and deal with it, then
Hmm.
nothing's going to change. And I
Right.
speak harshly in that regard because I'm a big proponent of accountability,
Right.
uh, in terms of mental illness, and just terms of in life, because there was a point where I didn't have that sense of self-awareness. I didn't have that clarity. I
Hmm.
didn't have that sense of accountability, and all that did was holding me back. And
Hmm.
learning accountability, especially for a man, and especially for a Black man, is not always easy, because this society now that we live in creates a victim mindset. Oh, somebody did that to me.
Yeah.
And that's true. But all that's doing is making us soft and making us weak. So the first key to any kind of recovery, even if you
Hmm.
don't have a mental illness, is taking accountability for your actions,
Actions.
then breaking that that victim mindset. So I'm drawing people in, uh,
Hmm.
but it's just, you can't. People won't get that help until they reach a certain point. So right now it's a
Yeah.
matter of getting them to that point where that switch can be flipped, and then they're like, okay, now I'm ready to do the work, because therapy is
Hmm.
work. If you think you're gonna go sit in therapy for an hour a week and just talk and not do any work outside of that, and not put in the time, the tears, the blood, the sweat, because recovery is very hard, then it's not going to work for you.
Hmm.
But we're a lazy society.
Yeah.
We're a lazy society, and people think they want everything done for them. They have a victim mindset, and until we can break
Hmm.
that, then it's going to be hard. But that's something I'm working hard to do every day.
Yeah, I do agree with you that a lot of times we do tend to play victim to a lot of things. It's happening to, or is it to me? Yeah, it's happening to me, and I'm just a person standing in the midst of it. I don't have anything to do with it. So a lot of times you're not seeing the role that they're playing in the things that are happening to them.
Right.
One of the other things you talked about was fatherhood, and there's a lot of discourse. And I think a lot of the discourse that is happening on social media does lead to some of the issues that we're having, with men in the Black community. Right now, Black men and Black women are at odds, right? If you listen to most of the podcasts, it's like, red pill, whatever. And each person is talking at each other. You're not doing this, you're not doing that, blah, blah, blah. And it's just causing a greater divide, right?
Right.
A lot of the conversation is about divesting, telling Black women to divest, leave Black men alone and find there are lots of other men out there. Just go out there and get it. You'll have better fathers. You'll have better this. All of those things that we're talking about. And you talked about fatherhood. And I think what I want to ask is how how can we fix the problems that we're having in the Black community around father fatherhood and fatherlessness, right? Um, and I'm not going to negate as a woman that sometimes women do play a role in it. They absolutely do. Um, because sometimes just like men, and I see this a lot, so I'm just going to say what I have to say and then you can answer all of it at one time. I see a lot where, especially with men, Black men, because I can only talk from that lens, that they will have a woman with one child, a child with one woman, and then they'll go on to another woman, have children, and then forgot that they had a child over here, especially if they have a contentious relationship with the first child's mother. And so that child gets iced out. And I don't think that men understand um, the psychological effects and the trauma and the daddy issues that develop, whether that child be male or female, from seeing their father interacting with another family in a father like way and have totally iced them out. Um, I
Well,
hear a lot of women.
you got too many people, like you got right.
Go
You got
ahead.
too many
No,
people
go
having
ahead.
kids that shouldn't be having. You
Very
got to.
true.
I'm just gonna be
Very
honest.
true.
I might piss some people off. I might piss some people off, but that's okay. Men and
That-
women need to keep their genitals to themselves, and that's the problem. You
I
got people
agree.
out here fornicating, having babies without
Uh,
relationships. The women
uh,
are not. The women are showing no discernment in who they allow to bed them, and the men are showing no discernment in who they're bedding. And now you have these kids with this dysfunctional person that you just got with because it felt good. Now you have this whole child that's affected. That's what it
yes.
comes down to. If
Yeah.
a man cannot deal with a woman, because oftentimes the women are toxic, they choose to move on. The woman
Mhm.
cannot feel away because oftentimes they're the ones that are creating those barriers and borders and walls that are keeping that man from wanting to be involved with his child.
Mhm.
I'm not even talking about the ones that are deadbeats. I can't address a deadbeat. I don't identify with that. But I'm talking about the men that I know. And we need to kill this narrative and this stereotype that black
Mhm.
men don't want to be and are not involved with their kids. Now, if you
Mhm.
watch TV, you think that's what it is. If you watch social
Mhm.
media, you think that's what it is.
Yeah.
No, it's not. From what I experience, most of the brothers
Mhm.
I know, they rock for the kids. So we
And
need to
that's why I
dispel
started
that
off saying
stereotype.
women are not. That's why I started off saying that women are not blameless in the situation, because I have seen that
Oh, yeah.
situation many times where
Right.
men want to be involved in their children's lives, but the woman is so bitter about the breakup that she will not allow him to have a relationship with the child. So it goes both ways, most definitely.
Right.
Mhm.
The and we need to start being responsible about who we lay down with. That's a lot
Mhm.
of. I mean, a lot of these children are not planned,
Mhm.
and you don't have a stable relationship with a person, or you see red flags, and many times you see black flags, but you ignore them. But you're
Mhm.
gonna do what feels good. But you got to say it's going to be a consequence for that. So
Right.
everything we do in life, good or bad, accrues a karmic debt. And if we
It does.
enter into having kids with people that we know we see red signs, as far, I mean, I'll put it to you this way: how many times have I seen men and women have children with someone that already has proven they're not a good parent? You know, this guy
Many
already
times.
has 3 to 5 kids. You
Mhm.
already know he's not taking care of them. What are you doing?
Mhm.
You already know
Mhm.
this woman has 4 or 5 kids, and half of them are with the state. What are you doing? So
Mhm.
it's about accountability. Once you deal with accountability, then we can sit down and have all those, auxiliary discussions about how to improve fatherhood. But fatherhood has to be a singularity, a solitary endeavor. Many times, there's no thing like my ex-wife. She's a great mom, but she's not a
Mhm.
single parent. She's just a married parent, and we have to make that distinction too. A lot of people yell. A lot of women yell single motherhood. I'm like, no, you're really not single. You're just not married to the
Mhm.
father because the father is still there. You're not a single
Mhm.
parent. And I hate that term. I hate what I see going on as far as the venom and vitriol between parents. My
Mhm.
ex-wife and I had an ugly divorce. Blood, tears, and sweat was shed. But by me being in therapy and by doing her work, that's one of my best friends now. So I
Okay.
hold my relationship that I developed and foster with my ex-wife in terms of our 14-year-old son as an example that no matter how ugly it gets, you can heal it and get on the right path. But people are just
Right.
selfish. They're mad because I'm not with, he doesn't want to be with me, so he can't see his kid. It's not about you at that point.
Mhm.
You remove yourself from the equation once you choose to procreate with someone. But I would
Right.
tell men and women, when you get with someone, look at who you're getting with. If you already look at the kind of parent they already are.
Mhm.
If that didn't tell you what direction you need to go in, I don't know what else to tell you. Because at the point you're just being stupid. So
Right.
once we can kind of solve that and get people to kind of, strap it up or do whatever and do all that, it's going to be really hard to navigate those relationships, in terms of what we need to do as a society to improve it. But I'm willing to have those. But I feel like that's better had on a more specified level, because there are no generalities in terms of having in terms of being a father or having that
Mhm.
relationship with your child, because every situation is so unique. So what
Right.
I endeavor people to do is get in therapy. Talk about how you're going to raise your kids before you lay down with them, because that's
I
always
like
going to be a
that.
possibility.
Mhm.
Discuss on the front. Hey, if we don't work out, is the kid going to stay with you? Is the kid going to stay with me? Get those
Mhm.
things in writing. Men,
Mhm.
go for custody of your children.
Mhm.
I'm seeing,
Mhm.
I got custody of mine. Get custody
Mhm.
of your children. Protect your
Yeah.
your, your paternal rights. Go to
Mhm.
court. Make sure you're getting your visitation. Make sure that whatever financial arrangement you can work out is fair and equitable. Do those
Mhm.
things to protect yourself, because if you're a man out here having sex, you should have you a lawyer already in case something happens. I mean, I'm being serious. I mean,
Yeah,
and that's the truth. And it's just, we have to start taking paternity and fatherhood and family and our values more seriously, because we're seeing it's causing the degradation of our society,
it
and we got to
is.
address. We have to address it.
Yeah, especially with some states bringing in new laws about the fact that paternity, or you know with the whole Roe versus Wade thing, that from the time
Right.
the woman gets pregnant, that child support starts then, not after the child is born.
Right.
So that's
Every
something else.
every birth every birth should be required to have a DNA test. Every
I
birth
agree. I
required.
agree. I see a
Woman
lot
has a
of women
problem
that get offended by it, but
because
I
they
don't think
creeping.
it's offensive. Um,
If you
because
get
I know
offended
it's
by
my
that,
child. Yeah, I know
right,
it's my child, but you don't know. I mean, we talk
right,
about trust a lot, and I know I'm going to get a lot of heat for this, but that's just kind of how I feel. Um, that if the man does have a question, you shouldn't be offended by the fact that he has a question. Just do the
right. Because
test. If
if
you're
you
confident, just do the test. As long as he's paying for it, it's fine.
well,
You know?
it should be, it should be factored into the cost of having a child, I think. I
Okay.
think we need to find a way to factor it in,
Mhm,
because when a woman has a child, it's expensive. Throw that cost on top of it. DNA test, take 2 seconds.
mhm,
It avoid a lot of problems. And if a woman is
mhm,
afraid or offended by that, that leads me to question her character. Is why are you afraid of that?
mhm,
That's the first thing I'm going to do is give her the side eye. Why does that offend you?
mhm,
You expecting this man to be on the hook and help you raise a kid. Now,
mhm,
that doesn't mean that every man, every negative test, or every instance where he's not the father, he's going to run off. If he chooses to do that, I wouldn't. If he chooses to do that, he can. But
Yeah,
we
and
need,
there are
because
lots
there's
of
the
men who choose
paternity
to
fraud
raise
is on the
children.
rise.
Yeah, there are lots of men who choose to raise
Right.
children that are not
Give
theirs
him that choice.
because
See,
Mhm,
see, see we love to talk about women's choices,
uh-huh,
but we need to start talking about men's choices too. And men's choices to stay into a relationship that may not be beneficial for them. And I
mhm,
think if you enacted a law where every birth requires a mandatory DNA test,
mhm,
it'll cut down on so much drama. It'll end a lot of toxic relationships before they get started. And my
mhm,
thing is, if you have a problem with it, I'm going to look at you like, why do you have a problem? Is it because you're not
mhm,
sure? If that's what it is, just say what it is. And let's just
mhm,
be honest and start being grown up, to start being adults, and start being real about the issues, and
mhm,
stop pandering, stop doing the politically correct crap that's killing us. Stop with all this woke garbage and start getting real about our communities, and time to wake up and grow
mhm.
up.
I agree. Let's kind of piggyback onto the mental health issues, and we talked about fatherhood, and I wanted to talk
Right,
about how um, have growing up with parents who are consistently at odds, the father and the mother, they can't get along, so co-parenting is um, a nightmare. Not for the I'm not
mhm,
even going to talk about for the parents because I've seen it happen to kids. The co-parenting aspect is a nightmare for the children, being shuffled back and
right,
forth between mom and dad, and you have to listen to mom trash dad, you have to listen to dad trash mom. That alone can create mental health issues in the
right,
adult, just a barrage of mental health issues. And I just wanted to make sure that I talk about the fact that mental health issues is not just about having bipolar or schizophrenia or being diagnosed as a narcissist or something like that. It can also
right.
cause clinical
Well, that's
depression.
when you
Right, and that's the aspect I think a lot of
True.
people don't think about depression as a true mental health issue and the complexities and the things that happen to people when they're clinically depressed because they're holding on to trauma from their childhood. Do you wanna talk about that?
Right. Sure. I think that when that occurs, excuse me, what you're encountering is a lot of selfishness because if you have a toxic relationship with your co-parent, you
Mhm,
are, unless you just totally don't care and have checked out and have no feelings for that child, you're going to see how it affects them. And if
mhm,
you choose to keep acting a fool with this woman or with this man, knowing that child's affected, that is where accountability and self-awareness comes in.
mhm,
Because if you are choosing not to co-parent because you're in your feelings or because something that's going on, you're choosing to hurt that child because that child will resent both parents if both are acting a fool. But a lot
right,
of these men and women that are doing these things behind their backs to talk bad about the other parent, understand something. When your
mhm,
child gets grown, they're going to remember that. And they're not going to look at the parent that you trashed. They're going to look at your actions. So think about that too. It's a
mhm,
matter of accountability. And that's more of a character issue. That's more of a moral issue. If we can get back to some morals and start promoting good character in our men and women, start
mhm.
having honest talk. uh, incident going on where you're going through something that may cause you mental health issues, be
Mhm.
aware of it. Try to be self-aware. Try to deal with it. Try not to run from it. Don't be in denial. That would be my first thing, is take accountability. Second would be learn as much as you can. We have Google now. How many times do we diagnose ourselves on WebMD? Well, learn about the
Mhm.
medications, learn about the condition, learn how to deal with it, and be patient with yourself. Recovery takes years. It's a lifetime endeavor.
Mhm.
Um, don't judge yourself by what others do. You are your only competition. You are your only bar. You are your only standard. Try every day to be better than you were the day before. If you focus on yourself and work on yourself and stay in your own lane, that'll help you. So to sum it up, the three things are accountability,
Mhm.
self-awareness, uh, learning about issues, exploring, looking at support groups, whatever you need to get the information you need to better equip yourself to deal with those issues, and just being
Mhm.
patient with yourself, learning to value yourself and loving yourself. Because if you don't love yourself or have a sense of self-value, what do you have to offer anyone? Nothing.
Right. Yeah. And the last question is, what makes you an impactor?
All we are given, all that God gives us is His grace and a testimony. We all have a journey, and what makes me an impactor is that I've learned that I have to bare my soul about things I've gone through to try to help people. I'm willing to do that. Most people can't. Most people won't. But I'm willing to share my experience, to share my pain, to share my trauma, to share the blood I've shed, my tears, to try to make it better for people, if for no other reason than I want to leave the world a better place than when I came. And my nonprofit and my work in mental health, it is my ministry. It is already a legacy I've left for my kids. And they've said that to me. So I'm just looking to keep doing the work, help people one person at a time, but also
Mhm.
enrich myself financially and too. So it's come full circle for me. And with it being 2025, I'm ready to go ahead and endeavor and help people and just try to make the world a better place. And that's what makes me an
Awesome.
impact.
All right. Tell us the name of your nonprofit again and how people can get in contact with you if they need help.
Okay, well, my nonprofit is called Metta Association. We have a board of directors. We're going to be relaunching our site and things this year. But in November, I started Meta Mindset Mentoring and Coaching, which is my life coaching endeavor. And you can reach us at www.mettammc.com. That's METTAMMC.com. Our niche is Black men, but we help anyone. We have
Mhm.
proven life coaching techniques, especially if you're dealing with a mental illness, especially if it's new to you, you have a new diagnosis. We have a sliding scale, so it's not cost prohibitive for anyone. But we
Mhm.
offer true proven techniques, understanding, and compassion to help our brothers in life coaching endeavors, whether it's career, whether it's personal, whether you're going through something. So you can reach us at www.metammc.com, or you can reach out via phone at 214-810-6518. You can text or call me. I answer my phone 24/7, whether you need life coaching, consulting, collaboration, anything that's going to help you in terms of improving your life, improving your
Mhm.
mental health, and improving your community. So that number is 214-810-6518. The website is www.metammc.com.
Okay. All right, George, thank you so much for being a guest here on Impactors Out Loud. And I wish you the
Okay.
best. And I love what you do. I do.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye bye.
All right. Bye bye.